Welcome back to WaterparkRanger's Let's Play Wind Waker. Last episode, we entered Phantom Ganon's maze in Ganon's tower, and in this episode, we're going to be getting through that maze. Right now, we're in one of the optional side rooms where you get locked in and have to fight enemies to get out of there. And here there are 3 Mighty Dark Nuts. Only one has a cape, though, so that one's a little bit more powerful than the others because of that added defense. I forget if the cape actually signifies that it's a more powerful kind of Mighty Dark Nut all around. I kind of don't think it means anything, other than it just giving it another defense. Sort of like giving a Dark Knight a shield. It has the same attack and defense. Everything about it's the same, except it having another weapon. Though Mighty Dark Nuts do, of course, have stat increases, like I mentioned earlier. Oh yeah, and I remember one time it was this room that I tried out the hookshot thing against one of the Mighty Dark Nuts. And yes, it does take like 40 to 50 hits to kill them. Oh, that was intense right there. They tried to use the spin against us, but somehow we managed to get past them and hit them with our own attack. But they are so hardy. Even now they're not dead, but that's probably going to change soon. Oh man, I want to knock one back into a column for dramatic effect. That would be awesome. Oh yeah! Only it didn't knock the column over. Oh well. Before we leave the room, we should probably take care of those columns with our, our skull hammer or something. They probably have some good spoils inside them, because usually the columns do hide stuff inside them. Or we could use the Dark Knight sword, which might be faster, actually. So, a large thing of magic, not bad. Don't know if we're going to check them all. That might take a little bit too long. Not like we really need anything. Nah, let's just keep going. It would take forever if we were to hit them all. Well, not forever, but I just don't feel like doing it. I think we're coming close to the end of Phantom Ganon's maze. So before we do, I should probably show you how you're supposed to actually get past him. This room is special, besides the others, because instead of having a ton of enemies, there's only one enemy in the room. And instead they just supply you with a ton of rupees and just all the items, basically, in the game. As far as I know, most of the final dungeons in Zelda have a room that's kind of like this one. In Ocarina of Time and Ganon's Tower, there's one with 3 business scrubs and a ton of fairies. So obviously that supplies you with a lot of items. In Twilight Princess's final dungeon, there is an extra small key you can find that leads to a hidden room at the end of the final dungeon that gives you a ton of items and rupees. And I think there was something similar in A Link to the Past, but I don't really remember too much of that final dungeon, other than it being ridiculously difficult. Like, that one is tough just as far as fights are concerned, but the puzzles are also kind of tough as well. Though Spirit Tracks' final dungeon, I think, had tougher puzzles overall. Alright, because Phantom Ganon is actually going to be disappearing from this point on pretty soon, I recommend that you take a picture of him now. Also, he has that new extra red laser attack that multi-strikes, but as I showed you right there, the spin attack is what you can use to deflect it. Also, if you're having trouble getting through the maze, the guide posted information. What they're talking about is whenever you defeat Phantom Ganon in any of those rooms, and he has very little HP for each room, just like 2 or 3 hits will do him in, what'll happen is he'll drop his sword, and then the sword hilt will point through whichever door you're supposed to go through next. Anyway, this is the only room where you really have to fight him, because there's actually a treasure here that you get for defeating him, and we stood right on top of it! Oh, that's awesome! That was so cool. When we opened it up, when standing on top of it, we just, like, hopped down from the top. And the reward you get for defeating him is the light arrow. So this gets added to your arrowheads. Unlike the other two, this one just does outright so much damage that it one-hit KOs anything, even Dark Nuts fully clad in armor, even Mighty Dark Nuts. So, it's a really cheap item, so I'm not going to use it in combat, per se, except where you actually need to use it in a certain battle that's coming up. Anyway, once you get through the maze, the prize is a door that leads through light and brings you back to this room. Only Phantom Ganon from the maze follows you in here. He's actually invincible here unless you use a light arrow on him. So let's see if we can actually reflect the ball onto him. I don't think you can. I think it's infinite hits. And let's use the empty bottle. I mean, we have one. Might as well use it, right? Makes me kind of happy I didn't bring a blue potion. See, he just disappears instead of getting hit by it. So no, we have no choice. We need to take him out with a light arrow. Oh man, he actually dishes out quite a bit of damage with that red laser attack. Didn't think you were going to get us again. So see, one light arrow takes him out in one hit, just like that. An enemy like Phantom Ganon. And he leaves behind his sword, The hilt is pointing to the next door we have to go through, which is this one. You can actually only get through it if you hit it with Phantom Ganon's sword, which I think is pretty cool, actually. And this takes us into the final section of Ganon's tower. The final dungeon in the game. The final section of the tower. Intense, intense! Let's go in there. Just getting out all the items I think would be awesome for combat. Alright, this portion of the dungeon is basically just defeat all the enemies that you meet on the way up. This is the same thing that they had at the end of Ocarina of Time's final dungeon, and they also have this at the end of Twilight Princess's final dungeon. There is also something similar to it in, I believe, Spirit Tracks and, maybe in Link to the Past. I'm just referencing all the Zelda games that I've played extensively. Not exactly extensively, but have, like, gotten through at least once, legitimately. Because Phantom Hourglass was kind of weird, and Legend of Zelda, the first game, is very different from the others. And Majora's Mask is also very different. Like, Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and Twilight Princess do have quite a few similarities. So right there was only one Moblin. Nothing much to speak of, but you'll see that the difficulty of the foes we encounter ramps up as we go up the stairs. Right here we have another Mighty Darknut. They've kind of just stopped giving us normal Darknuts from the looks of it. That's okay, we're getting used to fighting these guys. Let's just take him down with measured sword strikes. I've realized that if you're kind of more careful with how quickly you press the B button, you'll actually be able to get in more hits before knocking him over. Like, you can do it in measured hits, and that'll take down his HP in a better way, I think, actually. I mean, obviously, it's not as cool as knocking him around, but the problem is, once an enemy gets knocked on the ground, there's a moment where you can't hit them for a little while, so it might actually be quicker to kill them if you just time your sword attacks. This especially applies to Darknuts. Not so much Moblins, because once you have the Master Sword, they're very easy to beat. Alright, only one more thing blocking the final gateway up ahead. So let's use our Hurricane Spin to ascend the stairs. Pretty awesome way to climb. And they haven't seen us yet, but they're going to spot us now. Little interesting note, that Darknut on the left is the only Mighty Darknut in the game that doesn't have that special helmet. However, they both have those dangerous capes, so you do want to be very careful. Sometimes this fight can actually give you more trouble than when you have to fight the other two that are surrounded by fire for some reason. Don't know why. This is high speculation on my part. Maybe armor color has something to do with stat differences. It's difficult to tell, and I really doubt that this is the case. Also, the problem is when you're targeting a Darknut that has its helmet on, it's harder to hit it and just damage it generally. Well, so far we haven't taken a hit, which I think is awesome. Whoa, whoa, careful. Don't want to get hit by this. No! Oh, we got jump attacked. See, it does 3 hearts of damage! Finally, you get to see just how much raw damage a Mighty Darknut can do with one well-timed attack. Alright, well that was it. That was the final battalion that was guarding the door in front of the final boss, really. Once we go through there, it's the final battle of the game. Wow. Finally, the end of this Let's Play. I mean, it was awesome, but at the same time, it took forever. You can't use an empty bottle to deflect any more attacks up ahead, so I recommend just bottling one of the fairies, and kind of using it as like a Phoenix down, just as a last resort in case you forget to use a potion to give you back your life. I doubt we're really going to have to use any of those, but I'm warning you, the battle that's coming up through that door is actually the hardest in the game. By my standards, by my reckoning, it's the hardest fight in the game. So just warning you now, we're going to do the final boss next episode. See you then.